Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nikhil and this is the part 4 of IKIGAI series. My audiobook format is reading and explaining, and somewhere I have expressed my own opinions and experiences. And of course, you can use this as an audiobook, use headphones or earphones for better experience. And I really hope you understand the core of this Ikigai. Now let's start. I see here two titles. One says From Logotherapy to Ikigai, another one says How to Live Longer and Better by Finding Your Purpose. Let's see what's on next page. So the headline says, What is logotherapy? Well, Viktor Frankl, an Austrian neurologist, psychiatrist, philosopher, author, and Holocaust survivor, he was asked a question by a colleague to define his school of psychology in a single phrase. To which Frankl replied, Well, in logotherapy, the patient sits up straight and has to listen to the things that are on occasion hard to hear. The colleague had also described psychoanalysis, saying, In psychoanalysis, the patient lies down on the couch and tells you things that are on occasion hard to say. Okay. In other words, if I say psychoanalysis is a method of treating somebody with a mental illness by asking about his her past experiences, feelings, dreams, etc. in order to find out what is the meaning, what is making him her ill. But here we are talking about logotherapy. Frankl explains that one of the first questions he would ask the patients was why do you not commit suicide? Usually, the patients found good reasons not to and was able to carry on. Then, what does logotherapy actually do? The answer is pretty clear. It helps you find reasons to live. See, logotherapy pushes patients to consciously discover their life's purpose in order to confront their neurosis. Neurosis means it is a mental it is a mild mental illness that is not caused by organic diseases but involving symptoms of stress, depression, anxiety, obsessive behavior, etc. But they still have a little touch with reality. The search to fulfill their destiny then motivates them to press forward, breaking the mental chains of the past and overcoming the whatever obstacles they encounter along the way. Well, Frankel conducted a study in his Vienna clinic and found that both patients and people working in his clinic, all those 80% believed that human beings needed a reason for living, and around 60% felt that they had some or something in their lives worth dying for. The next headline is the search for meaning. See, the search for purpose became his personal driving force that allowed Frankel to achieve goals. Okay, there are 5 steps in which logotherapy can be summarized. First is a person feels empty, frustrated, or anxious. Second is that the therapist shows him that what he is feeling is the desire to have a meaningful life. Third is the patient discovers his life purpose. Uh, okay. The patient discovers his life purpose at a particular point in time in future. Fourth is on his own free will. The patient decides to accept or reject that destiny. Fifth is the newfound passion for life helps him overcome obstacles and sorrows. Okay. So, well, if I explain you easily, these things to feel anxious, empty, or frustrated shows there is something missing from your life. It can be a purpose or anything that could give his life a new meaning. During the therapy session, the therapist helps him to find his life's purpose, and the therapist gives him a complete freedom to choose whether to go with it or not. And of course, this newfound passion for life helps him overcome obstacles and sorrows. Okay, let's continue. Frankel himself would live and die for his principles and ideals. His experiences as a prisoner and Auschwitz showed him that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. It was something he had to go through alone, without any help, and it has inspired him for the rest of his life. Well, what the writers say that Frankl believes a lot in his principle and his ideals. Why? Because of his past experiences and this experience he had at Auschwitz when he was a prisoner. He realized something, and that was that everything can be taken from a man but not one thing, and that is how you respond to a given circumstance or a situation, how you react to it. It is in your own hands, and all these things he had to go through alone, which inspired him for the rest of his life. Okay, let's continue. There are 10 differences between psychoanalysis and logotherapy. In psychoanalysis, the patient reclines on a couch. The patient like a patient. In psychoanalysis, the patient reclines on a couch like a patient, but in logotherapy, the patient sits facing towards the therapist, who guides him or her without passing judgment. In psychoanalysis, second one, it takes it looks to the patient, it looks to the past in psychoanalysis, and in logotherapy, it looks forward towards the future. In psychoanalysis, third one, it analyzes neurosis. It means it analyzes if there is any mental illnesses like depression, anxiety, etc. And in logotherapy, it does not goes into patient's neurosis. Now, in psychoanalysis, fourth, it is fourth one, the drive is towards pleasure. And in logotherapy, the drive is towards purpose and meaning. Now, in psychoanalysis, fifth one centers on psychology, and in logotherapy, it includes a spiritual dimension. Now, in psychoanalysis, sixth one, it works on psychogenic neurosis, and in logotherapy, it works on noogenic or like existential neurosis. And now in psychoanalysis, seventh one, it analyzes the unconscious origin of conflict, see instinctual dimension, and in logotherapy, it deals with the conflicts when and where they arise, spiritual dimension. In psychoanalysis, eighth one, it only limits itself to a patient's instincts, but in logotherapy, it also deals with spiritual realities. Now, in psychoanalysis, ninth one, it is fundamentally incompatible with faith, and in logotherapy, it is compatible with faith. In psychoanalysis, it seeks reconcile conflicts and satisfy impulses and instincts, and in logotherapy, it seeks to help patient find meaning in his life and satisfy his moral principles. Now, this was whole differences between psychoanalysis and logotherapy. It shows that psychoanalysis deals with the person as a patient. It also focuses on his past and tries to correct them. It also analyzes what mental problems the person is suffering from, and it focuses on immediate pleasure, the instant gratification. It focuses on instincts, or I mean unconscious mind. It also seeks to restore problems and conflicts and satisfies impulses, whereas in logotherapy, the patient is treated as a normal, deprived person without passing any judgment. It also looks on the future side, also if do not get and it also do not get indulged in person's mental problems, but their drive and the focus is on the focus the person towards the future and meaning. It also goes beyond it also goes beyond just mind problems, focusing on spiritual concepts or existential neurosis. Existent existential also type of focus on spiritual and both scientific aspects. It deals with the problems where they arise rather than going deep. It also focuses on faith that gives optimistic view and hope to the person and a strong reason to live by, satisfying his moral principles. Okay, let's continue. The next headline says fight for yourself. Existential frustration arises when our life is without purpose or when that purpose is skeeved. In Frankel's view, however, there is no need to see this frustration as an anomaly or a symptom of neurosis. Instead, it can be a positive thing, a catalyst for change. Logotherapy does not see this frustration as mental illness the way other forms of therapy do, but rather a spiritual anguish, a natural and beneficial phenomena that drives those who suffer from it to seek a cure, whether on their own or with the help of others, and in so doing, to find greater satisfaction in life. It helps them change their own destiny. So, what the writers say here is that the natural frustration we have is because we lack purpose, a drive, and a goal. So, does not see this as a mental illness but as a positive thing. It can be an indication to change or to have a strong purpose in life. Doing this, logotherapy people can actually found a greater purpose and a greater satisfaction in life, which helps them to change their own destiny. Let's see what it says further. Logotherapy enters the picture. If the person needs help doing this, if he needs guidance in discovering his life's purpose and later in overcoming conflicts, so he can keep moving forward his objective. The man's search for meaning. Frankel cites one of the Nietzsche's famous aphorisms: "He who has why to live can bear with almost anyhow." Okay, so what does it mean? So, in general, it says that logotherapy helps discover people's purpose and how this purpose helps them overcome conflicts so he can keep moving forward. As Frankel says, one of the things in Nietzsche's have said that he who has why to live can bear with almost anyhow. Well, apparently, this logotherapy helps people find their why. If I explain this innate sentence in simple words, if you have a reason to live or a passion, no matter what the circumstances are, you will live through it. Okay, let's continue. Based on his own experience, Frankl believed that our health depends on that natural tension that comes from comparing what we have accomplished so far with what we would like to achieve in the future. What we need then is not a peaceful existence but a challenge we can strive to meet by applying all the skills at our disposal. So, Frankel says that our health means both physical and mental health depends on that feeling, that excitement when we see that we have accomplished so far and find the goal we want to achieve in future. He says when we strive for, I mean having a good striving for that goal with challenges is what the meaning of peaceful existence is actually. Okay, let's see what it says further. Existential crisis, on the other hand, is a typical of modern societies in which people do what they're told to do or what others do rather than what they want to do. They often try to fill the gap between what is expected of them and what they want for themselves with economic power or physical pleasure or by numbing their senses. It can even lead to suicide. Sunday neurosis, for example, is what happens without the obligations and commitments for the work week. The individual realizes how empty he is inside. He has to find a solution. Above all, he has to find his purpose, his reason for getting out of his bed, his ikigai. So, what it says further is due to our old societal norms, these old stereotypes which are outdated, this society rules which expects you to follow them, uh, and if not, you're bullied and hated for following a different paths. But most of the cases, like us, follow the existential crisis, leaving aside our dreams and thoughts. Here, Sunday neurosis means the anxiety we feel on Sundays, right before we have to go back to work on Monday. This feeling of anxiety and stress for many of us workers and even students when we have to go to daily on from Monday to Friday, this schedule, even the thought of it gives us stress and anxiety. This is an indication or as a result of how empty we are inside. It says we have to find a solution, a purpose, a reason for getting out of bed, our ikigai. Okay, let's continue. Well, the next sentence says, I feel empty inside. Okay, in a study conducted at Vienna Polyclinic Hospital, Frankel's team found that 55% of the patients they interviewed were experiencing some degree of existential crisis. According to logotherapy, discovering one's life's purpose helps an individual fill that existential void. Frankel, a man who faced his problems and turned his objectives into actions, could look back on his life in peace as he grew old. He did not have to envy those still enjoying their youth because he had amassed a broad set of experiences that showed he had lived for something. Okay, so Frankel's team conducted a study in Vienna Polyclinic Hospital that found that 55% of patients were going through these old societal stereotypes forcing on them. But this logotherapy, which helps them find the purpose, fills this empty void. This problem of existential crisis that purpose helps them to face those existential crises. Frankel didn't used to see youth enjoying their youth with as a result of with resent or any dissatisfaction because he himself had gathered a lot of experiences which showed him that he had lived for something. Okay, let's continue. The next headline is better living through logotherapy. A few key ideas. Okay, what is first? We don't create the meaning of our life. As Sartre claimed, we discover it. We each have, this is second one, we each have a unique reason for being, which can be adjusted or transformed many times over the years. Third one, just as worry often brings out precisely the thing that was feared, excessive attention to a desire or habit intention can keep that desire from being fulfilled. Humor, this is fourth one, humor can help break negative cycles and reduce anxiety. Fifth one, we all have the capacity to do noble or terrible things. The side of the equation we end up on depends on our decisions, not on the condition in which we find ourselves. Okay, so so first one is life is anything as the type of meaning you give it. But Sartre claimed that the meaning of life is received when we discover it, a purpose, a strong moral purpose. The second one. The second one says that we all have a unique reason for being alive and it can change over the years or adjusted in your lifestyle. Third one is just as worry focuses on negative points, the desire, a strong desire, can help you focus on just on that desire to be fulfilled or making your life fulfilling every single day. Fourth one, the fourth one is that that surprising humor can break traumas, that negative cycle that keeps on repeating in your life. Humor, it makes you open to positivity by reducing anxiety. Fifth one is that fifth one is one of the most important points to be noticed. That our decisions takes us on the bad or good side. We are responsible right now for our actions to where we will go and end up. Okay. Okay, now let's continue. In the pages that follow, we will look at four cases from the Frankel's own practice in order to better understand the search for meaning and purpose. Okay, so first case study is of Viktor Frankl in German concentration camps, as in those that would later be built in Japan and Korea. Psychiatrists confirmed that the prisoners with the greatest chance of survival were those who had things they wanted to accomplish outside the camp, those who felt a strong need to get out of there alive. This was true of Frankel, who, after being released and successfully developing the school of logotherapy, realized he had been the first patient of his own practice. Frankel had a goal to achieve, and it made him persevere. He arrived at Auschwitz carrying a manuscript that contained all the theories and research he had compiled all over the course of his career, ready for publication. When it was confiscated, he felt compelled to write it all over again, and that need drove him and gave his life meaning amid the constant horror and doubt of the concentration camp. So much so that over the years, and especially when he fell ill with typhus, he would jot down fragments and keywords from the lost work on any scrap of paper he found. Okay, so first case of study is of Viktor Frankl himself. So what does he say? So what does it says that when the Germany and its allies were defeated in Shington, their soldiers were captured. These soldiers were captured and sent to Japan for more Japan. They were sent to Japan. More than 4,600 prisoners of war were interned in the temporary camps in cities throughout the Japan. Psychiatrists believed and told that those prisoners will mostly survive who had things they wanted to accomplish outside the camp. those who felt a strong drive, a strong necessity to get out of there alive. Frankel realized that he has been the first patient of his own practice. Frankel had a goal, a strong goal, which made him to work on his goals consistently. When he arrived at the concentration camp of Auschwitz carrying a book written by him which contained all the theories and research he had gathered all over the years of his career, which was ready for publication, but Nazi guards took that manuscript from him forcefully. After that he felt in shock and disbelief. But after that he made vow to survive his time at this camp to rewrite the publish the manuscript, and later he was suffering from typhus disease. Okay, what is typhus disease? Its symptoms are purple rash, headache, fever. He was on brink of death. Frankel would write notes on his manuscript on a scrap paper, and he collected around the camp. That he collected at around the camp. Frankel believed that the manuscript was a valuable piece of work that only he could complete. He had a unique collection of experiences, knowledge, and skills to write this piece. Therefore, Frankel had convinced himself that his death would lead to the world missing his contribution. This became Frankel's life task. Okay, so the next case study is of the American diplomat. An important North American diplomat went to Frankel to pick up where he left off with a course of treatment he had started 5 years earlier in the United States. When Frankel asked him why he would start therapy, why he would started therapy in the first place, the diplomat answered that he hated his job and his country's international policies, which he had to follow and enforce. His American psychoanalyst, whom he would been seeing for years, insisted he make peace with his father so that his government and his job, both representations of the parental figure, sorry, both representations of the parental figure would seem less disagreeable. Frankel, however, showed him in just few sessions that his frustration was due to the fact that he wanted to pursue a different career, and the diplomat concluded his treatment with that idea in mind. 5 years later, what happened? The former diplomat informed Frankel that he had been working during that time in a different profession and that he was happy. In Frankel's view, the man not only didn't need all those years of psychoanalysis, he also couldn't even really be considered a patient in need of therapy. He was simply someone in search of life's new purpose. As soon as he found it, his life took on a deeper meaning. Okay, so what does it say is that an important, a very important man, because he was a diplomat. Okay, so what does a diplomat means? It means involving the work of maintaining good relations between governments of different countries. Okay, so but this Frankel, okay, so this man contacted Frankel after 5 years of the last session, said him that he was happy and doing good. But 5 years ago, when he came in contact with Frankel, he told Frankel that he had hated his job and his country's international policies. He was also seeing a psychoanalyst for years, but it couldn't give the solution. The man was needed, but in just few sessions with Frankel, showed him that he needed a new career to follow. So that now, 5 years later, he contacted that he is happy and working on a profession he liked. Frankel knew that he didn't needed years of psychoanalysis and he wasn't even considered as a patient in need of therapy, which was in need of therapy. He was just in the search for new life's purpose, and when he found it, his life took on a deeper meaning. Simple. So, okay, so this over. Now, the next case study is of the suicidal mother. A mother of a boy who had died at age 11 was admitted to Frankel's clinic after she tried to kill herself and her other son. It was this other son, paralyzed since birth, who kept her from carrying out her plan. He did believe his life had a purpose, and if his mother killed them both, it would keep him from achieving his goals. The woman shared her story in a group session to help her Frankel asked other women to imagine a hypothetical situation in which she lay on a deathbed, old and wealthy but childless. The woman insisted that in that case she would have felt her life had been a failure. When the suicidal mother was asked to perform the same exercise, imagining herself on her deathbed, she looked back and realized that she had done everything in her power for her children, for both of them. She had given her paralyzed son a good life, and he had transformed into a kind, reasonably happy person. To this, she added, crying, as for myself, I can look back peacefully on my life, for I can say my life was full of meaning, and have tried hard to live it fully. I have done my best. I have done my best for my son. My life was no failure. In this way, by imagining herself on her deathbed and looking back, the suicidal mother found the meaning that she was not aware of, and her life already had took on a new meaning. So, this mother had two children. One died at the age of 11, and the other one who was paralyzed from birth, which kept her carrying out her plans. That's why she tried to kill herself and his paralyzed son, ending up in Frankel's clinic. This boy believed that his life had a purpose, but if his mother killed them both, he won't able to pursue his goals. In a group session where there generally more than one person doing logotherapy session. During this session, there was another woman who shared a story of hers, and Frankel told her to imagine a situation where she was about to die, being old and wealthy, but childless. That woman said she would have felt her life as a failure if that happened. But as this was a group logotherapy session, the suicidal mother was also asked to perform this exercise. And when she performed this exercise, by imagining herself on her deathbed, she realized that she had done everything she could for the betterment of both of the children. Like she had given his paralyzed son a good life by which he turned into a kind and reasonably happy person while crying, while crying, she said, now for myself, I can look back peacefully on my life. She said, my life was full of meaning and I have tried to live it fully and I have done my best. I have done my best for my son. My life was no failure. Okay. So the next case study is of a grief-stricken doctor. An elderly doctor, unable to overcome the deep depression into which he had fallen after the death of his wife 2 years earlier, went to Frankel for help. Instead of giving him advice or analyzing his condition, Frankel asked him what would have happened if he had been the one who died first. The doctor, horrified, answered that it would have been terrible for his poor wife, that she would have suffered tremendously. To which Franco responded, you see, doctor, you have spared all of that suffering, but the price you have to pay for this is to survive and mourn her. The doctor didn't say another word. He left Frankel's office in peace. After taking the therapist's hand in his own, he was able to tolerate the pain in place of his beloved wife. His life had been given a purpose. Okay, so there was a doctor who fell in depression after his wife's death. He tried to overcome that depression several times but couldn't. So as for help, he went to Frankel. And Frankel, as soon as he heard his depression reason, and rather than studying him more about it or giving him any piece of advice, he just gave him a different perspective, a different angle to look at his situation. He just replaced his wife's death with him. The doctor got scared and realized that it would have been disaster for the poor wife, and she would have suffered tremendously. Listening to this, Frankel told him that you had taken all her suffering from herself, in which would have happened if she would have died. If okay, wait. So what happened is that so listening, sorry, I will start all over. So what happened is that listening to this, Frankel told him that you had taken all her suffering from her, which would have happened if he would have died. He had to pay if he if he would have died. He had to pay the price by surviving these world. From Frankel, he left his office in peace. He got the power to tolerate the pain in place of a life, in of a wife he loved, so that she couldn't go to the same suffering he had. His life had been given a purpose. Okay, now let's see what is Morita therapy. In the same decade that logotherapy came into being, a few years earlier, in fact, Shoma Morita created his own purpose centered therapy in Japan. It proved to be effective in the treatment of neurosis, obsessive compulsive disorder, and post traumatic stress. In addition to being a psychotherapist, Shoma Morita was a Zen Buddhist, and his therapy left a lasting spiritual mark on Japan. Many Western forms of therapy focus on controlling or modifying the patient's emotions. In the West, we tend to believe that what we think influences how we feel, which in turn influences how we act. In contrast, Morita therapy focuses on teaching patients to accept their emotions without trying to control them, since their feeling will change as a result of their actions. In addition to accept the patient's emotions, Morita therapy seeks to create new emotions on the basis of actions. According to Morita, these emotions are learned through experience and repetition. Morita therapy is not meant to eliminate symptoms. Instead, it teaches us to accept our desires, anxieties, fears, and worries and let them go. As Morita writes in his book, Morita Therapy and the True Nature of Anxiety Based Disorders, in feeling to be wealthy, in, uh, in the feeling, it is best to be wealthy and generous. Morita explained the idea of letting go of negative feelings with the following fable. A donkey that is tied to a post by a rope will keep walking around the post in an attempt to free itself, only to become more immobilized and attached to the post. The same thing applies to people with obsessive thinking who become more trapped in their own suffering when they try to escape from the fears and discomfort. So what happened was the 10 years logotherapy was born. Moeda therapy had also taken place in Japan. It actually proved effective in the treatment of mental illnesses, even OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. OCD means obsessive compulsive disorder, and even for the people who cannot move from past terrifying events that occurred. As Morita was a Zen Buddhist, his therapy left a lasting spiritual effect on Japan. What the difference is in West in Western therapy, we try to control on thoughts and emotions. In the West, we generally think that what we think is how we act. But in case of Morita therapy, it teaches us to accept our emotions and thoughts. Morita therapy also teaches you how to create emotions and thoughts through life experiences and some repetitions. Morita therapy doesn't teach to get rid of symptoms, but how accepting your desires, anxieties, fears, and worries loses its power to make you suffer. As this line written in Morita's book, in feeling it is best to be generous and wealthy. What it means is letting go of those emotions. Do not get attached to it. Do not try to hold on to it. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Don't try to get rid of it. Accept them and they will live. Those emotions will fade automatically. Don't give it more power by reacting with aversion or craving. Just accept it as it is. Like Morita explained with an example, like a donkey is tied to a pole, but as the donkey tries to get rid of it, it only becomes more tangled to it. Okay, now I will give you one example, like a bonfire. So these woods in bonfire represents your thoughts and emotions, and they are burning. So it is making you suffer. But rather than waiting for it to drift off on its own, you add fuel of woods of reaction to it get more and more big. So just accepting it and letting it cool down. The same thing also applied to the people who cannot get rid of repeating mental patterns, or I would say OCD. But rather than trying to escape from it, escape from their fears and discomfort, try to accept it. Okay, now let's see what are the basic principles of Morita therapy. Okay, the first principle is to accept your feelings. If we have obsessive thoughts, we should try not to control them or get rid of them. If we do, they become more intense. Regarding human emotions, the Zen master would say, if we try to get rid of one wave with another, we end up with an infinite sea. We don't create our feelings, they simply come to us, and we have to accept them. The trick is welcoming them. Mohita likened emotions to the weather. We can't predict or control them. We can only observe them. To this point, he often quoted the Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who would say, "Hello, solitude, how are you doing today? Come sit with me and I will care for you." Okay, so what does the first principle says is to accept your feelings. We have all types of thoughts, and those thoughts which we try to get rid of because they are unwholesome or negative. It can be OCD as well. We desperately try to get rid of it only to find them coming again and again in our mind. It says we don't create those thoughts and feelings, they simply come and go. But what we do is we react to it by trying to get rid of it, and we only create more of those thoughts and emotions. Doing that, he says that just observe it and accept it as it is, as it comes, without trying to get rid of it. Just observe your thoughts and be aware of them. Just do this. Okay, so the next principle is do what you should be doing. We shouldn't focus on eliminating symptoms because recovery will come on its own. We should focus on the present moment. And and if we suffer, and if we are suffering, on accepting that suffering, above all, we should avoid intellectualizing the situation. The therapist's mission is to develop the patient's character so he or she can face any situation, and character is grounded in the things we do. Morita therapy does not offer its patients explanations, but rather allows them to learn from their actions and activities. It doesn't tell you how to meditate or how to keep the diary the way Western therapists do. It is up to the patient to make discoveries through experience. Okay, so the third one is to discover your life's purpose. We can't control our emotions, but we can take charge of our actions every day. This is why we should have a clear sense of our purpose and always keep Mohita's mantra in mind. What do we need to be doing right now? What action should we be taking? The key to achieving this is having dared to look inside yourself to find your ikigai. Okay, so the second principle says do what you should be doing. Morita therapy says focusing on problems and only trying to get rid of it will only attract more, rather than he tells to focus on present moment, not past or future. What a normal therapist usually do is they try to create they try to create a character for the patient, a strong character to face challenges. But Mohila therapy to discover life through their unique life decisions and situations, and to learn about themselves through life experiences. And the third principle says to discover your life's purpose, we cannot control our thoughts and our emotions. What we can control is our responses and actions in everyday life. And if we don't have a purpose, we won't work hard to achieve anything and take actions every day. And always keep this Moedas mantra in mind. What do we need to be doing right now, or what action should we be taking? And these things takes place automatically if you try or already have found it, which is your ikigai. Okay, now let's see what are the four phases of Morita therapy. Morita's original treatment, which lasts 15 to 21 days, consists of the following stages: isolation and rest, 5 to 7 days. During the first week of treatment, the patient rests in a room without any external stimuli, no television, books, family, friends, or speaking. All the patient has is his thoughts. He lies down for most of the day and is visited regularly by the therapist, who tries to avoid interacting with him as much as possible. The therapist simply advises the patient to continue observing the rise and fall of his emotions as he lies there. When the patient gets bored and wants to start doing things again, he is ready to move on to the next stage of therapy. Second is light occupational therapy, 5 to 7 days. This part of the therapy lasts 5 to 7 days. In this stage, the patient performs repetitive tasks in silence. One of these is keeping a diary about his thoughts and feelings. The patient goes outside after a week of being shut in, takes walks in nature, and does breathing exercises. He also starts doing simple activities such as gardening, drawing, and painting. During this stage, the patient is still not allowed to talk to anyone except the therapist. Third one, occupational therapy. This lasts 5 to 7 days. In this stage, the patient performs tasks that require physical movement. Dr. Morita liked to take his patients to the mountains to chop woods. In addition to physical tasks, the patient is also immersed in other activities such as writing, painting, making ceramics. The patient can speak with others at this point, but about the tasks at hand. The fourth one is return to social life and the real world. The patient leaves the hospital and is reintroduced to social life, but maintains the practice of meditation and occupational therapy developed during the treatment. The idea is to re-enter society as a new person with a sense of purpose and without being controlled by social or emotional pressures. Okay, so I will explain you these four phases in short. So first phase is totally alone, talking with no one, no phones, no family, friends, or television. Even the therapist try to avoid him as much as possible, cause he has no other thing he can get distracted from. So only one thing he has left with, which is his mind and him. He automatically stands to know the nature of mind. The person gets bored and wants to stand doing things out of excitement. This period is for 5 to 7 days. In this stage, he is isolated for a week. Now, in the second stage, the person starts doing some activities like keeping a diary and noting down his thoughts and feelings. In this phase, he is now allowed to go out for a walk but can't talk with anyone, and to do such activities, and also is allowed to do such activities like gardening, drawing, painting. He is only allowed to talk to the therapist only. This period is for a week. The second stage, the third stage, sorry, the third stage is where the patient starts doing heavy physical activities like going on mountain to chop the woods and bring the woods down, and also to allowed and also he is allowed to talk to others but only related to work. What happens is he or she starts to see every work with a new perspective cause of the isolation and also because of noble silence. This helps person to see the world more in clarity. And because of this, in fourth stage, the patient is told to return to the social life, the real world. The patient leaves the treatment center and is reintroduced with a new perspective or a newly born person, and the person is told to maintain meditation. This four phases results in the person to think clearly and shows you the importance of having a purpose, and gives an inner confidence to learn about life and to face challenges. Okay, now let's see what is Naikan meditation. This is last, I think so. So Morita was a great Zen master of Naikan introspective meditation. Much of his therapy draws on his knowledge and mastery of this school, which centers on three questions the individual must ask him or herself. First one is, what have I received from person X? Second one, what have I given to person X? Third, what problems have I caused for the person X? Through these reflections, we stop identifying others as the cause of our problems and deepen our sense of responsibility. As Morita said, if you are angry and want to fight, think about it for 3 days before coming to blows. And after 3 days, the intense desire to fight will pass on its own. Okay, so what does this questions mean? First is, what have I received from person X? Suppose you are fighting with someone verbally, ask this question to yourself. What the other person saying? What is he she trying to say to you? Second is, what the other person is suffering from? Ask this question. The third one is, what is it you may have done that other person have caused uh, react like that, or what is the reason the person is reacting the way they are doing. These questions help you understand others first before you're trying to making them understand your point. In verbal fight, the person who wins is the one who first understands the other person or tries to understand the other person. Okay, and now Ikigai. Logotherapy and Morita therapy are both grounded in personal unique experience that you can access without therapist or spiritual retreats. The mission of finding your ikigai and existential fuel. Once you find it, it is only a matter of having the courage and making the effort to stay on the right path. In the following chapters, we will take a look at the basic tools you will need to get moving along that path, finding flow in the tasks you have chosen to do, eating a balanced and mindful way, doing low intensity exercises, and learning a lot to give in when difficulties and learning not to give in when difficulties arise. In order to do this, you have to accept that the world, like the people who live in it, is imperfect and that is still full of opportunities for growth and achievement. And the lesson ends with a question. Are you ready to throw yourself into your passion as if it were the most important thing in the world? This is the end. Okay, now this is the end of the video, guys. Hope you understood this part. Thank you guys for watching, and I will meet you guys in the next video. Bye bye, take care.